Strap on your earbuds, ladies and gents. You're listening to a full Monty version of Broken Boner Radio.
Don't feel down if you can't get it up. We all need to find the fun in being dysfunctional. It can be brutal if you've got a limp noodle. Getting hard is hard to do, but we're here for you. It's Broken Boner Radio.
Here's your host, Daniel Canfield.
I am more excited about today's guest in our interview than probably any other that I may do, simply because this is my son, Ryan. Ryan, say hi.
Hey, Dad. Very touched to be here. I appreciate the nod, and I'm looking forward to it.
I want to honor you to be able to come forward, to have the transparency and the balls and the intestinal fortitude to come forward and talk publicly about what you've been going through with erectile dysfunction is enormous to me as a father. I'm so proud of you, but also just knowing that you're stepping forward to help so many men, especially in your age group. You're a millennial. You're 30.
I am 30. I guess I'd be on the outskirts of the millennials, but no, I'm proud of you as well. I think some of my courage comes from you and your experiences. They really do mirror mine, and I think over the next hour we're going to see a lot of that. A lot of our stories match.
What I want the listeners to understand is you and I we've both been diagnosed by Dr. Goldstein at San Diego Sexual Medicine as having corporal erectile tissue fibrosis. And I've talked about this before on other issues or other episodes, and it's also, there's a whole article and stuff on it on the website at danielcanfield.com. But we both suffer from that, and Dr. Goldstein has been doing research, and there's been other research being done that's showing that some forms of erectile dysfunction, particularly the one that we both suffer from, can be genetically handed down.
That was pretty groundbreaking for him. He almost didn't know what to say when I was in the office, and he found the same issue. He said it's possible, but I think as the years have gone on, he's pretty confident that we both suffer from it, and it is passed down. We were both born with it. It's a brand new field, like you've been saying.
And ironically, you know, and I mentioned this in previous episodes, talking to Grandpa, or my dad, who's from the Great Generation, he too, when I started to explain to him, and I had never had a conversation about my erectile dysfunction with my father growing up, never thought to talk about it. Something we as men, as you know, Ryan, we don't. That's one of the last things we want to talk about, particularly with a parent. But as I was preparing to launch this platform to the world, I felt obligated to talk to Grandpa because I didn't want him to get embarrassed by somebody else coming forward and saying, "Hey, I heard your son on the radio or TV talking about his dick. What the hell's up with that?" Right?
Yeah, knowing Grandpa, that might hit him the wrong way if he didn't see it coming.
God bless him. He's 89 years old. You know, he's an old 89.
We don't want to put him through another heart attack.
Exactly. He did have a heart attack in his mid-60s, I think. So yeah, we don't want to do that to him again. But in having that very transparent, it was one of the most beautiful conversations I've ever had with Grandpa. I started sharing with him my experiences going way back, my first sexual experiences and having difficulties with erections and stuff. And he came forward and he goes, "You know, son, I suffered some of the same things, but, you know, I was with your mother almost my whole life." He didn't know. He had no clue that he was suffering from the same things you and I suffer from. So there's 3 generations right there about, you know, obviously this condition is genetic or can be genetic. So Ryan, when did you're 30 now, when were you first sexually active?
Let's see, I would have been sexually active, if I can think back, I was about 18 years old.
By the way, you may say some things that I'll go, "What the fuck?" You did what?
We are very open. You mentioned you don't talk to your dad, or you've never talked to your dad or been open, but I think our relationship, we've been very open, not necessarily about ED, but sex in general, relationships. And you might not have heard all my stories or my whole background, so some of this, might be new. But sexually active when I was 18. And that's not to say I didn't fool around. I think making out with girls back when I was in junior high, because I point that out because I can think back to those times where maybe not during those moments I thought something was wrong, but looking back, maybe I should have been a little more aroused, up for the situation, if you will, during those times, because that's the peak of puberty there, getting into your high school years. But I would say physical hands-on contact with a woman 18 years old, that's when it started, or when it at least attempted to start.
See, the crazy part of what you just said is, and again, if we mirror our experiences and go back in time, when I was your age, it was in the 70s. Well, nobody talked about erectile dysfunction. Pornography was really not prevalent yet. I mean, I had never seen pornography, so at that point in my life, I didn't know what was quote unquote, and I'm not trying to say pornography is normal by any stretch of the imagination, but in fact, you see in a fully erect penis and it's erect for a long time, and that was not around me back then. But what you're explaining about being with girls and kissing and, you know, just the simple petting that we do as young kids, looking
Experimenting.
back
Yeah.
and experimenting, I was going through the same thing. I wasn't getting aroused. I wouldn't get erections.
Yeah, and I even remember back in maybe junior high, grade school, about teachers and sex ed and them being forward with the boys in the class. You know, don't be embarrassed if you know, you've got
Pop a boner.
you've got something in your pants. You pop the boner, and you might need to give up a presentation that day. Don't be embarrassed. This is normal. And I'm sitting there, you know, going, well, you know, what's the deal? This has never happened to me. What's he talking about?
Oh my God. I had the exact same experiences, Rye.
Yeah, I'm telling you, our past mirror pretty closely. But I do remember back, you know, looking back, and maybe not at the time I thought anything was wrong with me. I just maybe, you know, during class I never popped a boner. But I think
Same with me. Guys would joke around and say, oh my God, you know, Mrs. Smith called me to do an equation on the chalkboard and I had a boner. I didn't want to get up. And I'd hear that and I'm like, oh, that's never fucking happened to me.
Right.
You know, lucky me. I mean, you know, kind of at the time, I'm like, well, I'm glad I didn't have to go through that. But yeah, it's an indication.
And I've had my occasional morning wood, if you will, but I don't think it by any means normal, or what a normal functioning boy or young man should be experiencing. But again, sexually active when I was 18. It was embarrassing. It really was, looking back on it.
Can you remember like your first time when it was noticeable to not just you, but whoever you were with? What was that like? What do you
Yeah, we
remember?
were, me and the current girlfriend were on our way back from a trip we were taking, and I was driving, and I was stimulating her in the passenger seat. We were getting pretty hot and heavy.
Didn't I tell you how unsafe it is to drive like that? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm
when there's
envious. Yes.
parents at home, there's only you know, so few places that young adults have the time and the opportunity. So we were driving home, and I was stimulating her, and she got off, and
Wow.
it was my turn. Of course, she went first, and okay, here comes my turn, and
And you're still driving.
I'm still driving. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe not the most optimal, comfortable situation that one of my first experiences could be in, but nonetheless, she went down, and after a few minutes, I stopped her because nothing was happening. The boner was not there, and it was embarrassing. And if I think back, that's probably one of the first experiences that I've had an interaction where it didn't work. And
So let me ask you a question at this point, because I remember this same shit happening to me when I was young. Were you viscerally turned on? I mean, you obviously pleasured her.
oh, absolutely. I mean, we had about an hour and a half drive home. I looked up, and we were home. It felt like 20 minutes. I was zoned, in the zone, if you will. Yes, very much into it.
Viscerally and
Viscerally, I mean, my mind was tingling, my senses were tingling, everything but the blood flow to that area was working. And, I was excited. And then, so yes, everything else that goes along with being sexually excited and into your partner.
so I want to point out to the lady listeners out there. So this is another case where it had nothing to do with the young lady you were with. She was doing everything right. The moment was right.
Oh, absolutely. She was turning me on. I had turned her on, which turns me on even more. We were into each other, and no, absolutely not her fault at all. No.
Do you remember what her reaction was? What she said, or
I was driving at the time, so as I was trying to concentrate on that.
so you could blame it on that?
Well, thinking back on it, her reaction, I don't remember exactly, but that wasn't the first time with her that had happened or that did happen over our brief history. She didn't, I don't know if there was any really reaction.
The reason I ask that question is because I'm finding more and more, especially the more women I talk to, when the erection fails, the brain trauma that happens, both, and we're going to talk about what you were thinking and feeling at the time, but I want to focus on her a little bit and what you can recall. The brain trauma, the brain fuck that happens when the erection fails is catastrophic in many cases to men and women because the women internalize it. I've had women tell me, "Oh my God, I was with this guy, and he couldn't get a hard on," and I thought, "Man, what am I doing wrong? What he doesn't like me?" Because, like you say, all the other bells and whistles were going off, right? It was such a turn-on moment. But when we use our erect penis as a gauge as to how stimulated we are as a man, it's a false indicator in many cases, right?
I mean, that's the only indicator that she has is, well, oh crap, he's hard. Look at that. I must be really turning him on. Look how hard he is. He must be so excited right now. And yeah, I can imagine what must have gone through her head or what goes through women's heads when
And
maybe
that's the dialogue. That's the what do I want to call it? Dialogue. That's the formula that I want to change. I want to bring to the world, and with your help and other men who are like you are brave enough to get transparent and talk about this stuff, and women too, is to bring the message that, the theory of erectivity, when you have all these perfect elements in line that society says it should equal a boner 100% of the time, is so false, especially when you start to enter in variables that some guys may not even know affect them, like erectile dysfunction or some form of it. A lot of it can be social and psychological, but it's not 100% thing. And when the world thinks that, especially women, it's what results, like I said, in the clusterfuck in our brains and in their brains is catastrophic. It can end relationships. It can end one before it starts.
Yeah, and I did mention that relationship was brief, and I can look back and say with 100% certainty that we never had intercourse, and that did disrupt the relationship, or the way the relationship was at least supposed to flow, being 18 years old, crazy about each other, having all these other connections. That connection wasn't there, and I wouldn't say it ruined the relationship, but it wasn't going any further.
Well, I'm excited to know that in the future episodes, I'm actually going to have women of all ages. You're on the fringe of the millennial, but you're young. A lot of people wouldn't think a man at 30 would have erectile dysfunction. In fact, because of our condition that you and I share, this goes back to your this was your first sexual partner?
Yes, it would have
Yeah.
been, and that was just before I went to
I mean,
college, and
people would say, well, that shouldn't happen. You're at the height
no,
of your testosterone levels are probably up in the 1,000 range. We talk about the manly numbers on my website, and the average range is between I forget what the low end is, 250 something up to 880, upper towards 900 is the high end for the average male. But when you're going through puberty and in the very young years, it's like up in the 1300s sometimes. So, I mean, chemistry wise, you should be breaking brick walls with your
I
dick.
should have been full steam ahead, and yeah, being born with this definitely did slow that part of relationships down for years to come. From
So what did it do in your head? How did you cope? What were you going through? What were your feelings?
I became really, really good at oral. No, my
I'm
feeling.
not laughing because that's I mean, right?
Yeah, no,
You did, right?
there's a lot of compensation there. How it made me feel at the time, I don't know. I internalize a lot of my feelings. You know this, with anything in life, not just my sexual relationships, but I
Yeah,
do.
of my three sons, and those of out there listening may not know, I have three adult sons. Ryan's 30, Sean is 29, and Corey is 28, 27. He's right
That
there.
sounds about right.
And no, by the way, those two don't seem to be, we've had these very transparent conversations with all of you because I was concerned once I realized I had something that could be genetically predisposed. I had a deep conversation with all of you, and those two seem to be totally okay. But you are the most sensitive, kind of hold things in, emotional based son
Hmm.
of the three. So I used to see you isolate.
Oh yeah, all the time. Maybe even to go as far as depression. Absolutely. Into my college years, flirted with that, being overweight. Most of my high school and into college, yo-yoing back and forth. I can't say that my condition led to that. But I can positively say that that had a big contributing factor to my mood and the way my relationships went and my day-to-day outlook on life. Not everything's about sex, but I think as men, a lot is controlled through your penis, your masculinity, your manhood. And for me, I was never able to show that, or I was never able to maybe dominate, if you will. You know, men are supposed to lead, men are supposed to be on top of things.
Men are supposed to get an erection when the woman turns them on properly.
Right.
100% of the
100% of
time.
the time, every time. Uh,
What a fucking message does that leave in this society where the measure of our masculinity is the sum of the length, girth, and longevity of our
no,
erection? Really?
we have, I think, a more deeper meaning of that not being able to get that erection. So we understand, I think you and I, there are a lot more aspects to a relationship than just the boner. And
Right.
you can get deeper. There's more ways to connect with your partner than just having the erection. And I think we're more experienced in that on some levels. So we can see that and kind of go, geez, it's not all about the boner. Come on.
It's funny to me thinking about that because it did cause me to evolve differently than most of my male friends. And I don't know if you can speak to that, but I found different ways to communicate with women, to be sexual with women, and created. I was the more, I wasn't the big macho, although I did put on this big false front, which I talk about in other parts of my website and stuff about the sexual armor that I built around me. The world will look at me and think, well, there's a stud. Matter of fact, I used to be referred to back when I was your age as he's a player.
Hey, you were the
He's a
captain of the
player.
basketball team.
I always drove a hot car. I had the hot Irish setter dog that back in that day was like the dog to have. Now it's like, don't you have a black lab
I do
now?
have a black
Right?
lab. I think nowadays the dog is the Frenchie. But
Oh, the French.
at any
Oh, yeah.
rate,
But I had everything. I built this false facade out in front of me so that the world would look at me and go, "Man, this guy's a stud." And like I said, I would have girls who would say, "No, I'd ask for their phone number, the old-fashioned way. We didn't have Tinder and all that back then." And they go, "Yeah, you kind of look like a player to me." And I'm thinking inside, "Girl, I can't even fucking get a heart on. If we start making out, you're going to look at me and go, "Are you gay?" Or like, "Is there something wrong with me? You're not reacting to my," while on the inside, like you said in that car situation, I'd be totally turned on.
yeah, it's funny you mentioned the thought that she might have had that you were gay. I've had so many relationships where maybe even my partner or their best friend in just casual conversation later through the relationship, where they know I'm not gay, but they thought in the beginning that I was gay. It's interesting the theories that they draw just because you can't get the boner and be and
Exactly.
show it.
It's again, it's that thing I've created. It's on the website, and we're doing a little short movie about it called "The Theory of Erectivity." It's a bullshit theorem, and I want to debunk it.
You talked about masks and putting on this bravado. I think in my situation, what I did was I clung on to the relationship. Why they stayed with me without much of a sexual relationship, I don't know. The oral must have been really good, but
Are you bragging?
I mean, I can brag. But thinking back, I mean, no, I didn't have the fancy car, and I didn't try to outwardly compensate.
I'm gonna give out your personal phone number at the end of the show. So if any ladies out there are interested, I know you're in a current relationship. So, but
Happily,
I'm
yes.
joking. I'm joking. Yes, happily in a new relationship.
But no, I didn't. I didn't put on that falseness. I think I more internalized it. But I clung on to unhealthy relationships where, in some circumstances they looked elsewhere to find that hard boner that I wasn't providing.
Yeah, like one of my female guests said, some women sometimes we just want to get fucked. We just, we want to have sex. I mean, and God bless them, but that kind of leaves you and I in the dust when it comes to fulfilling that itch.
Well, at least it used to.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, I can see that. Looking back, I would have loved to gone in that direction and just taken over, but it just wasn't physically possible.
Did it keep you from pursuing? Because I know it did me. I'd be in situations and I'd see a really hot girl or, somebody that really interested me. But in the back of my mind, it was always like, fuck, if I start this ball rolling down the hill, I'm going to have to face this point where we start making out, nothing happens, the dick doesn't get hard, and then I got to go through that whole brain fuck again, and so does she. Does that ever like literally intimidate you or stop you from pursuing?
It did, yeah, 100%. I remember back into college, we went out, all the guys went out, and we'd come up to a group of women and hit things off. Yeah, always in the back of my head, this is never going to be a physical relationship as I wanted it to be. Maybe if I wanted to take her home for the evening. I mean, that thought never ever crossed my mind. Or the one night stand, I think, is a big buzzword. The one night stand. I've never had a one night stand. It just wasn't. It wouldn't have been possible.
Now, to trace back, you weren't 100% dysfunctional, correct? You said you do remember getting morning wood from time to time.
I do.
And were there times?
I found that if I was extremely comfortable with my partner, and I go back to the one night stand, I don't know this girl. I might be extremely attracted to her, but maybe subconsciously I'm not comfortable with her. Knowing my situation, it was always there. So yes, I've had morning wood. I've gotten it up. I've had sex with my girlfriends, but it was more after maybe a few weeks of experimenting and getting comfortable with my partner that it would, I would say, semi-work. It would work for maybe a short period of time and then diminish, within seconds of our interaction. But
And I think you mentioned too, as we had one of our deeper dialogues about this topic, we're going to go into a little bit more about how you and I communicated about this. But do I remember you saying like you noticed that if you changed position or rolled over, like being on your back was not an option?
yeah, changing position scared me. I mean, if I was in, well, I wasn't moving from that position. I mean,
If you're literally in, you're not
I
moving.
am in, and I'm not going anywhere. But of course, that's not realistic. When it comes to having sex, you're moving around. You want to move around. She wants to move around. So no, yeah. When I was changing positions, it would go away. What was there would go away. It was never ever fully, viscerally rock hard at any point during my past relationships, but it was enough to get the job done. But if I wanted to be on my back, just that less than a minute, 30 seconds of me rolling over, losing a little bit of stimulation to that area, goodbye.
Ryan, this whole conversation is like me talking to
Am I giving you the
myself,
chills? You getting a deja vu?
point by point by point by point. I had an opportunity to speak in front of a men's group a couple of months ago, and they were millennial age, guys your age, all the way up to guys my age. And when I was done with the program, because I unveiled to them about the erectile dysfunction and that I ultimately ended up having a penile implant after going through all the other treatments over a period of years. But the one point that especially the younger guys came to me about, I unveiled about, you and that you suffer from this. One of the most beautiful, like I felt so honored and so, I don't know what the word is, kind of a mentoring warmth came over me because these young guys are coming up to me and they're like, how in the hell did you have that kind of conversation with your son? I wish I could have that with my dad. I was blown away. I was like, wow. So I want to talk to that a little bit because to me, this whole thing about erectile dysfunction and being the voice of it and getting it out there and getting people to talk about it, to me, number one is starting the dialogue and the communication. It's about communication between us as men and also us with partners and partners understanding more. And it's all about communication. So if there's something here that's the value, I think, is for us to talk about, how did we communicate? How did we establish that relationship? And I'm on kind of scary territory here because I've never asked you these particular questions, but when do you remember you and I or me saying something about erectile dysfunction or opening the door to have these conversations? Because my memory of that's a little foggy as to when and where and how the topics came up. What do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, just a little history of going back to when we were younger. You've always, as a father, been open and very outgoing. I don't think there's anything that you wouldn't have talked about, not necessarily sexually, but in everyday life with the three of us boys. You were always there and outgoing and willing to talk about anything. And I don't know if that was part of your, your bravado that you were putting on.
Wow.
Larger than life character.
Ryan, you nailed that on the head.
The larger than life character that we all three looked up to and were raised with. I think it started a long time ago, even before I was sexually active. You owned your own business. You were an entrepreneur. You were on top of the world. You got a great relationship, the house, the life in San Diego here. So I think it did start a long time ago where...
Let me interject. You guys had to endure my wife, Stacy, now, who I've been with for almost 22 years. Our 20th anniversary is coming up, is your stepmom. So you guys had to endure a divorce and all the shit that brings.
Yeah, we did. We did go through that. I love my stepmom. Hi, Stacy. I internalized a lot of it. I think that's just the way I deal with things, but
we made it through.
We did make it through. I think.
And the crazy part you mentioned about that might have been part of my vibrato being so open. Looking back now that I'm on this side of erectile dysfunction and I'm building this platform and I'm starting to, I have man in the mirror moments almost every day now when I wake up, and I recall things that I did or said or the ways I acted back then that were all part of this bullshit front that I put up because deep down inside I was not a man. That's what I felt about myself because I could not get a fucking boner like every other guy talked about. And so I crafted this whole like interference that ran out in front of me that everyone saw it as, oh, wow, he's got everything.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't sell yourself short that you weren't the man. I mean, you own your own business, very successful, and you've built all these relationships. I wouldn't say you've built all these relationships on a false sense of security. And if you did, I don't think that's the way you carried your life day to day.
Not the relationship building, but I can look back and know that a lot of my inappropriateness, my over sexualized dialogue, I was always one to make, if there was a joke in the room to be told that had a sexual base to it, I was the one that was going to tell it
You were,
first.
yep, that I do remember.
That was all part of over being hypersexualized and overcompensating for the lack that what I felt deep down inside that nobody else knew about.
So you being very outgoing and always the joke teller, if you will, I think we were always open to talk to you about anything. So when you ask me when was the first time that I remember us talking about being dysfunctional, now is the question sex in general or being dysfunctional with the condition that we have?
Well, I don't even remember when I told you guys first, or even told you, because I might not. We didn't always have like a sit down with all of us. It might have been an individual. You and I might have been out playing golf together or having a drink somewhere, and your brothers weren't around. So I might have had conversations separately. But when's your first memory of my dysfunctionalism coming to the forefront? Because I don't remember specifically. I'm just curious if you
I
do.
remember the first conversation that you and I had on my dysfunctionalism, as you put it, when I was in college and one of my early relationships there, where I revealed to you that sometimes it doesn't work, it's not working the way it should, and I think you recommended something like Viagra or maybe something that you were taking at the time, but I don't think we had an in-depth story on that's what you suffered your whole life with. I think it was only till recently that I moved back home that we really started having more of a conversation on relating our stories and how much they mirror and are so alike.
Yeah. And when you say move back home, I want the audience to be clear. He didn't move back home to the house. I always had the 18 and out rule with my boys that when each of you, do you remember that conversation when you guys were like,
Oh yeah.
what, you were 10, 11, and 12 maybe?
Yep, you're 18 and you're on your own. You figure it out.
Yep, those are my expectations
that-
but I gave you plenty of notice, right?
It served us well, I think.
You were 10, 11, and 12, I think, or around that age at the time when I wasn't dropping this on you when you reached 17 and a half years old. I was like, you're going to have time to prepare.
We had some time to prepare, absolutely.
Yeah, I see parents all the time. They're like, how in the world could you be that hard on your kids? I'm like, what? I was raising fucking boys. I was raising them to be men. And I figured at that young age, if I could get them to at least comprehend that when they have a goal and it's a few years out, but when they reach 18, those are my expectations. I'm so proud. You all made it. I'm so proud of all three of you.
We're all on our 2 feet and doing well. But yeah, I at 18 I moved out off to college and out of the house and away for a good part of 10 years. So
So when you moved back home, you meant you moved from mid part
Central
of
California, back to, I mean, who could stay away from San Diego?
We
So,
do live in paradise, don't we?
Yep, yes we do.
So, but that's the way we are. We're father son. So I do vaguely remember now having those conversations with you about how you were struggling, and it mortified me. I have probably never shared this with you. I, as your father, was fucking mortified.
I think that's why I don't remember you giving much of feedback of, oh my God, it's happened. This is what I dealt with. And maybe that's why, is because when I said that, you almost dropped the phone kind of moment. So no, this is the first time that I've actually heard that.
And
It makes sense.
I remember now too, because I immediately, as soon as we got off the phone, I turned to Stacy and I was devastated. I'm like, you won't believe what Ryan's going through. And it's ironic too, because you mentioned back in your earlier history of you found yourself clinging to girls.
Every one of them. Yeah.
I did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we recognize that. I'll tell you, as your parental group, your mom and stepdad and Stacy and I, we all call ourselves the parental village. It takes a village to raise a good kid. And we all communicate and we get along great. But we would watch you go from it was always serious, deep relationship to serious, deep relationship. And when you weren't in a relationship, you were miserable.
Oh,
You
I
were
was depressed.
so
Yeah.
withdrawn, so down. I did the exact same shit when I was your age. I went through very deep, serious relationships when I was younger because they were girls that for some reason was okay that I wasn't pitching the high hard one every other day.
It does amaze me looking back on the history. The women that I did go out with, that I stuck in a few year relationship with, actually did want to stick around. Though, and I think there were more connection on a different level, and I think those women saw that and saw maybe more of a future than the guy that they're gonna have a one night stand with. Going back to there's so many more ways to connect with your partner. So yeah, I mean I had the ring picked out for at least two of the three women
What?
that I dated for a couple years.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is for
I mean, well,
first
and I
time
say
news for
that
me, but that's cool.
I say
I'm just
that
like,
not
wow.
that I was planning the ceremony on one knee, but I know that it was getting to that point where we were having open conversations on being with each other for the rest of our lives and getting
Wow.
married. So it just so happened that all my past relationships, we never talked about it until recently. I had a relationship where she looked at me and she said, "This is not normal. This is not normal," and then that started opening up the
Yeah, no
dialogue.
shit, Sherlock. I've been living with
Yeah,
this my whole life.
yeah, I know. And it was normal for me though. That sort of relationship was normal for me, but it took one to finally say, this isn't normal. That first conversation that you and I had over the phone back in college, that was 2004 or 2005. I'm not sure when you started with Dr. G really discovering internally
It
what
was
was
after
going
that.
on. I'm sure, yeah.
I'd have to have Dr. Goldstein look in his records, but I think I went to him. Well, I had my implant surgery in 2012, so it was probably 4 to 5 years prior to that, whatever the math is on that. 2007, 2008,
Hmm.
maybe nine,
Hmm.
somewhere in there. Yeah.
So we were still both kind of stumbling in the dark.
Oh, totally.
Viagra, I think you shipped me or mailed me a pill.
Shh,
Um,
I didn't do that. Okay, I
no,
did.
it
Yeah, I
was
did. I
one
remember
night.
that now. Oh my God. I'm sharing my drugs with my son.
I think I split it in two because of the dosage, but those were awesome
Yeah,
nights.
I think I warned you. So it really worked. So yeah, let's get into that. So treatments. I did share with you some of my Viagra, and
You did,
and it
yeah,
worked
it did,
really
yeah.
well. Like the best boner you
Uh,
ever had.
oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, the best.
Now the one thing with Viagra, it's expensive. So
And
for a lot of young guys, that's like,
you only shipped me one. I do remember that. I was on my own from there.
yeah, they were like
But
twenty
it's
dollars a pill back then, and then
oh
it got
yeah.
even higher than that.
That was I had that one, and for some reason after that, I didn't pursue it. Maybe because it was so expensive. I'm a working college student.
You're 20 something at that time. What 20-year-old goes to his doctor and says, "Hey, I think I have erectile dysfunction"? It doesn't make fucking sense. It doesn't compute with what people know about erectile dysfunction, especially even just a few years ago.
Right.
It's like, why would you go do that? How could you even get the courage to even go in and say, "Hey, yeah, okay, I'm in my mid 20s, but man, I'm suffering erectile dysfunction." Because you hadn't
Hmm.
had any accidents. Because again, I always want men to understand there's a lot of things that can bring on ED. For young men, bicycle, you fall on the bar of your bicycle. There's a lot of shit that can happen to you physically that will disrupt the plumbing down there. And it's more sensitive than you realize. But you hadn't had any of that kind of thing happen, right?
And no, I mean I used to ride a bike a lot. Our stepdad would take us out for hour-long bike rides on the road bike. I don't remember having an accident. I do remember Dr. G on one of our first consultations giving me a diagnosis that maybe I had had an accident, and that was before he had really looked at the scope
Yeah.
of
He said the same thing to
the
me.
ultrasound. That
Yeah.
He might have just been throwing out a
Well, and
diagnosis.
he said the same thing to me. He wanted, think back in, history. Do you remember ever having an injury like that down there? And I couldn't remember anything either. But then it led to,
I mean, I remember a time I was on the bike for an hour or two, and it hurt to go to the bathroom. I think that's normal from time to time.
wow.
Something gets pinched. You're sitting on the seat for a few hours. Things get pinched, but maybe that contributed to something. I was young and developing at that age, so.
Well, but you eventually went in with Dr. Goldstein and did the full battery of tests, including
We did the
sonogram,
sonogram, which
which revealed the
with the
fibrosis.
fibrosis. Yeah, I had the internals of how did he put it, an 80-year-old,
Yep. That's
and
what he
I
told
was
me too.
28 at the time.
Yep. So that's not from an injury typically.
No.
That kind of, it does not come from an injury. I mean, it can. There's things that can lead to fibrosis like that. I'm not a doctor. I've only lived my life with erectile dysfunction, as have you. But typically that's, what we have is a condition, a degenerative condition. And again, I say this in almost every podcast I do. It's a condition that most men over the course of their lifetime is going to start suffering from, because it's
We're
a
all
thing
heading in that
comes.
direction. We're all the clock is ticking.
Fascinating. Dr. Goldstein shared with me a fascinating statistic. Over 30 million men in America suffer from some form of erectile dysfunction. We happen to have one of those forms. But as men start to reach their 40s, and this will reach even back into your late 20s, 30s, the statistics that are out there is men 40 and older, 40% of men in that age bracket will begin to suffer some form of erectile dysfunction. And then every 10 years, it goes up another 10%. So 50-year-olds, it's 50%, 60, 60%. So if we all live to be 100, we're all going to be limp and impotent. If you just do the simple math. That doesn't affect everybody, but it certainly affects way more men and way younger than they would ever
I mean,
expect.
it's pretty evident with how successful Viagra's become, and I mean, you see commercials today; they're pretty prevalent across the board.
Now, speaking about going back to the treatments that you and I have shared or done, I did Viagra, and it worked reasonably well for a while. And I started Viagra way later than you did. I mean, when I was your age, Viagra wasn't even a blip on the radar. Viagra didn't come out until, I'm trying to remember, late 80s, somewhere in the 80s. So when I finally got a hold of Viagra, my condition was way worse than yours was at 30. The degenerative part, it had gotten worse for me. So Viagra did work. Probably didn't work as well as it did for you because your condition wasn't as advanced. But I noticed Viagra over time stopped working. What was your experience with Viagra or Cialis, or did you take any of the other ones?
I did. Back maybe a few years ago, I started getting prescriptions for I think it was Cialis, and the dosage was some milligram. And sometimes it would work. I remember the first month or so it would really work, but there were other factors that came into that, your diet or the dosage, or it did after a while begin to fade. I had to take more of it. There was it was a shelf life on what your body tolerates. Maybe it gets used to the drug.
I'm writing this article called Beyond the Little Blue Pill, because a lot of men out there and women that have men or, partners that are suffering from some form of ED figure, well, once you get on the pill, you're good. If it works, it works. It should never stop working. And when it stops having an effectiveness to a certain level, like, what the fuck does that mean? Because I've had women say, oh, my husband was taking Viagra, but, he doesn't get aroused anymore. And I guess I'm getting older. I guess I'm not as sexual as I used to be because the Viagra is not working. It's like,
I'm not a doctor, but the body gets used to different chemical reactions that you feed it on a constant basis. I can cite antibacterials. They were worried, or they're still worried about you using all these antibacterial hand soaps and things. Well, the bacteria will get immune to those
Right.
chemicals if you keep feeding your body these antibacteria. The bacteria get smarter, or they find a way around it. And I think chemically it's the same idea, that your body just doesn't react the same to it over time.
The one thing I'll speak to too on these particular drugs that I had a long conversation with Dr. Goldstein about, because Viagra stopped working for me. And he basically said the condition we actually both have deals with blood flow. Those pills affect blood flow. Well, if the organ that retains your blood, your dick, is like a sponge, and as it gets older or loses its ability to retain that blood, those medicines won't help as much. In fact, for me, it stopped working altogether because fibrosis caused that tissue to just completely not do what it was supposed to do. So that was an actual It wasn't like I got used to it or anything like that. It was literally it's a degenerative condition that just gets worse and worse with time. So the key here, man, is and ladies, if you've been using it and it's not working as much anymore, go be honest with your doctors about it. Don't internalize. Don't think, well, shit. Or women, oh gosh, I'm not, I'm getting older. We've been married so many years and we've just lost he's lost his lust for me. May have nothing to do with it.
There are so many other options. All we've really hit the topic of is the pill.
Yeah.
And
So where are you now with that? What are you doing now?
so I am
Grab
prodding.
hold of your seats, ladies and gents.
I am injecting straight into my penis a muscle relaxer, if you will. Dr. Goldstein, I'm sure, will breathe some light on the topic, but
Yeah, there's articles on the website about penile injection therapy.
it is a syringe that you inject straight into the shaft of the penis, and it is an instant, within 3 minutes, hard on.
And you don't have to even be viscerally stimulated with that, correct?
Your own blood flow and being into the situation, of course, will amplify the effect. But no, you don't have to be stimulated in other ways.
And I know of what I'm speaking because that was another treatment that Dr. Goldstein had me do after Viagra stopped working. So yes, I've stuck a needle in my dick for over a year. I use it for over a year. How long have you been using the injections?
It's been almost a year. Almost a year. About a year. I would say a year. And hallelujah, it it works every time, all the time, and it's really changed the outlook on my life in general. Just the overall satisfaction that I have with my partner, just not having to think about it, not having to worry, not having to stress about changing positions. I'm excited now to change positions, something new. There have been a lot of new experiences for me the last year, and it's been really exciting. And I can attribute that to having, I wouldn't say a cure, I would say it's a remedy for my issue for now, because again, it is degenerative, but the injections are working. It's
Can I just say, Ryan, and I can speak for both Stacy and myself, we have seen such a huge transformation in your heart and in your life. Your outlook on life and love and everything has just gone through the roof since you started this journey of being with Dr. Goldstein and really educating yourself and getting to the bottom, having the balls to go in and talk to the experts and get the testing done. I'm sure that wasn't easy. Was it, or was it for
no,
you?
I mean the Dr. G's office is full of women, and I go in there a little flush, but he makes it very comfortable, and they're all very open about it. You have to be comfortable enough with yourself, and I thank you for recognizing the changes that you've seen in me. Yeah, it feels great, and it's funny how this thing that consumed my life can flip that quickly into a positive direction. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the future, and progressing and growing each and every day from my experiences that maybe in the past I wouldn't have wanted to do. Again, the depression, it's very much opened up my life to all sorts of different experiences that I'm fulfilling.
The key message here, too, that I want to send out, and I'm sure you'll concur with me on this, men, don't be afraid. Go out and get checked. Dr. Goldstein's here in San Diego. We're very fortunate. He's literally on our back door. But there's wonderful clinics all around the country. It's just finding the experts to dive into this. The more honest and transparent you are about yourself, the better the help will be for you. And the good news is there's help. And, it starts with communication with yourself, the man in the mirror moment, and then making that appointment and going and getting some simple blood work done, talking honestly about what's going on, and then communication with your partner and what's going on, and opening that dialogue. And hopefully my goal as the voice of erectile dysfunction is there's going to be help on my website. I'm going to put pointers out and give things like what to do, like how do you open the dialogue, how do you have the conversation, either with a partner or with a son or what have you, that you need to talk about this topic. I'm so excited that you've kind of shared, and joined me on this journey, and because you can speak to the younger crowd. The one thing I wanted to ask is, obviously my diagnosis ended up, or my treatments ended up where injections stopped working after a year. Now you've only been on them how long?
Just under a year.
Okay. I spoke to I had another interview where the gentleman had been on the injections for like 7 years. So they can last quite a long time depending upon where you are physically. I ended up where they stopped working for me after a year, and my final treatment was to get a penile implant surgery. And that revolutionized my life, because I know that's not going to leave me. My degenerative condition is now gone out of my life, and I can get an erection anytime I feel like it. I can get an erection when I don't even feel like it.
I couldn't imagine if what you must have been thinking once the injections started waning. Did you know that implant was out there at the time, or were you freaking out, going, "Oh, here we go again"?
Yes. What I found out was when Viagra started to fail is when I seeked out Dr. Goldstein. In fact, I went online because I had heard something. I don't know if it was on an old Donahue TV show or some TV show from a long time ago. I remember something about somebody being in the audience and they're saying he had a penile implant. And I was fascinated. I was like, again, here I am suffering from ED. I'm like, okay, this sounds interesting. What's this all about? But I remember something about it being out there. So I went on the internet and looked up penile implant surgeries. And I was expecting it to be this big, like they slice and dice you 6 ways from Sunday, and it's a big operation and stuff. And there was this one video, and it was Dr. Goldstein was one of the doctors and surgeons who were sponsoring this video, and they actually showed the full surgery. And literally, I thought, that's like what women go through to get breast implants. It's a simple incision, like 1.5 inches long on the face of your ball sack. Some doctors do it in a different spot, but Dr. Goldstein's was on the front of your ball sack where all the wrinkly skin is. And then they insert everything through there, and it showed the prosthesis and how it all worked. And I was like, man, it scared the shit out of me, but I thought, man, that's not nearly what I thought it was going to be as far as, going into slicing and dicing my parts. And so I looked up Dr. Goldstein, and lo and behold, his practice was right here in San Diego. So when I made my first appointment with Dr. Goldstein, I walked in going, hey, I understand you're one of the top people in the world about doing penile implant surgeries. I think I'm a candidate. And he talked me back from that in the beginning. And I love that about him. I've said that before.
He did the same with myself too.
Really?
Yeah, well, I went in there going, give me what my dad has. And he said, whoa. Wait a minute.
Is that really what you said? Oh my God.
I don't, not in so many words, but I wouldn't say pressuring him. I was a little forward about, what are the steps on becoming a candidate for this. And yeah, he did. He talked me back, kind of reined me back in.
And that's where he put me on injections. Was the first thing he put me on. And I'm a needle phobe.
Oh, me too. Forget it.
Does it hurt?
No, no. After a while, you don't even feel it.
Yep.
It's an in and out, and you're on your way. You're ready to go.
It was amazing. So how do you feel knowing that a penile implant surgery is in your future? More than likely, at some point.
Yeah, I better start saving now. Because they aren't cheap and they usually aren't covered under insurance. But
I think that's changing. A lot of men I've talked to that have had them, it's, again, insurance and all those things, it takes them forever to catch up with erectile dysfunction is even though it's been around a long time, it's just men never knew they had it. It's a new topic. It's a new insurance
this is all brand new. Yeah.
thing to, figure out all the protocols on. So it's, eventually I can't fathom that, they won't start. And like I said, I've talked to several implant patients and it was covered by their insurance. So it just really depends on your situation. My insurance would have covered it, but I'm an entrepreneur and we have a really high deductible to keep our rates low. And my deductible was about the cost. It was like 10 grand, 15 grand, somewhere in there when you factored in the hospital and the other stuff.
I mean, but really what it means, there shouldn't be a dollar monetary value to it, the way it's going to change your life. And it really is priceless, I think. They say the injections are going to deteriorate, and there's different dosages you can play with and strengths of the compounds. But yeah, when you say I'm on my way to an implant, it's a little intimidating, but I'm up for anything. I'm not gonna sit.
Trust me, after you have an implant, you literally can get up for anything.
But I don't sit there and take an injection, thinking in the back of my mind that this might be my last, or gosh, I hope this works as good as it did last time. So I'm open to the journey now that I've overcome so much in the last couple of years. I'm just up for the new experience, and
that's awesome.
It doesn't weigh on me.
And does it give you comfort knowing that there's something beyond the injections if and when those don't work anymore? Does that give you a peace?
Yeah, and then when I say I'm not worried about is this my last injection, that is in the back of my head. There is a final solution if it gets to that point, or when I should say.
Well,
when.
I can share with you that if and when it gets to that point, you'll be down for about 6 weeks, and then you'll be up as much and as often as you want. And you don't have to pay for the injections all the time. It's already, it's done. Just takes a little finger manipulation to pump the pump. And I have an inflatable implant, if anybody was wondering. And again, all that information's on the website. Ryan, we're about at the end of this. I hate to say, I've had so much fun just being able to talk to you like this. And guys out there, you wonder how we dialogue. This is how we do it. Ryan, right? We talk like this all the time about virtually any topic.
Anything, everything. Yeah.
And I love having that kind of relationship with you. And as I do with your brothers, we all kind of have that open relationship. In closing, what, your millennials, guys that are your age or even younger, what message would you want to leave with them?
I think you touched on it, just being open with your partner, being open with your parents about talking about sex. And if you're having issues, don't hide it. This is something that a lot of people do suffer from, and there's solutions out there and experts out there. You gotta start the dialogue. You'd be surprised on how many people can relate and help you from there.
So even if you're young, like this, you were 18 when you had your first sexual experience. I was 21. I wish I could have talked to somebody back then.
Right. Obviously, if you see that it's a pattern, speak up. It's you're never too young. I wish I had, I don't like to always look backwards on things, but I wish I had been more proactive about. I did have an issue, and I did speak to you about it, but I didn't really do anything about it because I really didn't talk to anybody else about it, let alone my partner. So just be open and.
Well, and hopefully, building this platform, that's a part of why I feel such a mission to do this, is to create a safe place for men and women to either tune into these podcasts. They can call in on the number. If they have questions, they can email me at letstalk@danielcanfield.com. I want to create a safe place where people can come and have a touch point with erectile dysfunction, with somebody who's willing to share just about anything. You know, if not me, my son, I mean, we're here to help. So, Ryan, is there any last words you want to say? Any last tidbits of information before we sign off?
Just want to say I love you, Dad, and I'm very proud of you again. This is exciting. You say it's a new field. It really is about opening up, and this radio show, the website, and what's to come is really cool. And I just thank you for being so open with me, and I can't wait. I can't wait for the future, and what it holds.
Well, it means the world to me that you've joined me in this and you're willing to open your heart to millions of men and women around the world. So thank you. Okay, that's it for today. I'm totally spent and people, I need to go take a nap. If you'd like to call and leave a question or comment for the show, 405-592-6637. That's 405-59-BONER. You can find me on Facebook at Broken Boner Radio or danielcanfield.com. Or you can even follow me on Twitter at Real Broken Boner. I want to give a shout out to my production team at podcastfasttrack.com. Carrie, you know I couldn't do this without you. And I can't wait to talk more about my erectile dysfunction with all of you in future episodes. In the meantime, keep it real.